Well, first off and most important, I want to thank everybody for all your support. I've had two governor's races and two Senate races, and so many people in this room have been part of those elections, so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And thanks for electing Republicans. First, I want to recognize my wife. I think she's right out here in front of us. She's put up with all these races, all the things I've tried in my life. She's been a great partner. Now, let's remember last year. Last year, when I spoke here, we talked about the hostages who were still being held captive by Hamas. That was a tough time. Thank God they're free. Thank God they're home. And thank you to the RJC for all you did, that you kept up the pressure for their release. So congratulations. As soon as October 7th happened, I put a poster up in front of my office that had of all the hostages. And I wanted every person that walked into my office to see exactly what Hamas was doing. The faces of these individuals that these Hamas terrorists were holding. We tweeted a story out every day about a hostage. We didn't want anybody ever to forget what happened. Too many people want the world to forget what happened and the terror that Hamas created, not Israel. I'm so glad that today we can meet knowing that President Trump busted his butt and got them home, and they are free. I want to thank Matt Brooks and Norm Coleman for their relentless efforts leading the RJC, and they've done a great job. From the first time I came here, this has gotten to be a bigger and bigger group every year. Now, in my lifetime, I've never seen so much anti-Semitism as we've seen the last few years. It's tough. Thank God we have President Trump in the White House, but there are still severe pockets of anti-Semitism across the country that have to be stamped out. The RJC has been vital for helping fight back by helping elect great candidates who will support our Jewish communities and our great ally, the only democracy in the Middle East, Israel. Now I want to go home. I want to thank Matt Bogdanoff, who handles Florida for the RJC. So if you'll be a big round to all the Floridians to thank Matt. Now, we all know elections matter, right? But in my lifetime, I cannot think of an election that was more consequential than last November. Think about it. Only because President Trump is president, Iran has been sidelined, the hostages who were held for 2 years have been freed. We are on a path, and hopefully we'll continue down a path to peace for Israel. Our southern border is secure. Poorly run cities like Washington, D.C. are finally safe. Residents can walk around. Families have more rights than criminals and the homeless. When I got to D.C., especially during the Biden administration, there were just homeless shelters everywhere. Now we could stand here all night, and I could list all the great things that have happened since President Trump took office just a little over 9 months ago. But think about it. What if he didn't win? Iran would have a nuclear weapon. Terrorists would be trying to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Jewish students wouldn't be able to be safe at their college campuses. Drugs, terrorists, and illegals would be flooding across their border just like they did during the Biden administration. Law enforcement would be villainized, while racist DEI policy would be running our federal government under Harris. Now, I know we're all thankful that President Trump is back in the White House, because think of the contrast of what our country could have been if Harris had won. But there is still severe anti-Semitism. And there are socialist candidates across our country on the cusp of potentially leading some of our nation's biggest cities. Just look at New York City, where voters are about to elect a radical socialist who is anti-Semitic, anti-police, and anti-capitalism in New York City. Mandamia said, quote, "We have to make it clear that when the boots of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF." Think about that statement. He's saying that Israel and our law enforcement are fueling violence in our great country. It's not just anti-Semitic, anti-police. Just like socialism, it's evil and it's idiotic. Now think about it. When I was growing up, New York City represented the American dream, a city where anything was possible. You wanted to move to New York City to live the dream of this country. Now it's become the city where Jewish students are attacked, capitalism is shunned, and people like Mandami are celebrated. New York City has benefited from the best system in the world, capitalism. Now is villainized, capitalism is villainized by Mandami and Democrats all across this country. But think about it, socialism isn't new. It's an old, barbaric, discredited idea that's failed every time it's been tried. Look at my state. We have people from Cuba and Venezuela, those families have fled those countries and the brutal regimes that only stayed in power through death and destruction. And unfortunately, over the course of history, we continue to see anti-Semitism pop up all over the world, but even in our country. And that's why groups like the RJC, AIPAC, and the U.S. Holocaust Museum are so important in the collective fight for the Jewish people and the support of Israel. But it's clear, the more success President Trump has and Republicans have, the more extreme the Democrats go to embrace the most radical candidates and their policies. Right now, government is shut down in Washington, D.C. over one reason. Chuck Schumer and the Democrats want to give benefits, your tax dollars, to illegals. They want to make sure that your tax dollars pay for trans surgeries and abortion. Our military, TSA workers, FAA aren't getting paid. Democrats are putting illegals, abortion, and trans surgeries above all these hard-working federal workers. Now, despite the fact that we're not getting paid, are all these individuals getting paid? Guess who is getting paid? Chuck Schumer, the Democrats, all of Congress is getting paid. It's so messed up. Since I got to the Senate, I've had a bill, no budget, no pay. But who blocks it? Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. We shouldn't get paid if we don't do our job. I'm a business guy. I never got paid if I didn't do my job. We didn't pay people that didn't show up to work. So we have to get the budget done. But this is today's Democrat Party, and it's actually the future of the Democrat Party. It's funded by people like George Soros and other socialist, anti-Semitic millionaires and billionaires. These camps run on, quote, free everything. It sounds really nice to everybody, but it has never worked. And the crazy thing is that Democrats like Gavin Newsom and Mandami lie about how they grew up. They grew up that they struggled. They struggled so they can be relatable. But guess what? They're both elites who grew up wealthy. I actually grew up poor. I actually lived in public housing. I didn't have to lie and make up some story about how my family struggled. I never met my dad. My adopted dad had a 6th grade education. And he fought in the Second World War. He was one of 3,000 individuals that did all 4 combat jumps with the 82nd Airborne. So like my older brother and me, we started working when we were under 10. I was 7 years old, just to help my family. My mom had to figure out how to put food on the table, and it was hard. And you know, even though my family struggled, my mom told me, only because you grew up in America, you have every opportunity. You live in the greatest country in the world. I joined the Navy at 18, got married at 19, and I started businesses. We spent decades building businesses, and we lived our version of the American dream. Is that this American dream that every Democrat right now is trying to destroy. They attack America, they attack allies like Israel, they attack capitalism, they attack freedom, they attack anyone who has made money. They attack success. And they have to fabricate their stories about struggling. They wouldn't even understand the true horrors of socialism because they haven't led it. They like to attract President Trump for every word he says. But maybe if they were tolerant, like they say they were, they would see that Israel is the greatest champion for human rights in the Middle East. They spend their time right now worrying about the east wing of the White House. Maybe Gavin Newsom should worry more about not letting communities like Pacific Palisades burn down because he doesn't care about preparing for wildfires. Maybe Mondami should focus on bringing the cost of living down in New York City by cutting taxes and reducing regulations, rather than trying to open up grocery stores. Think about it. Here's a guy that grew up rich, has never worried about being fed. Maybe he should go down to Cuba and see what it's like to see a bread line. His goal is to turn New York City into New Havana. Then we've got Michigan. Michigan wants to tax the rich. There's a ballot proposal that there's going to change the Constitution to start, saying they're going to go after the rich. They claim it is just on, you're just on those rich people that make a whole bunch of money. That's how it all starts, but eventually they tax everyone because it never works. It's never enough money. Think about right now, how much would it take if we took everybody's income and we wanted to pay off the deficit this year? What do you think? If we took everybody's income, if they made $10 million, $1 million, 500,000, we'd have to take everybody's income to balance the budget this year if you made more than $100,000. It's never enough. Now, when I was governor of Florida, I've worked hard to make sure, that was a good job, by the way. And Byron Dollins is here, and he's going to do a great job. He's going to do a great job. I hope everybody helps him. So what do? We tried to say, we worked our butts off to get everybody a job. We had 1.7 million jobs. We tried to become #1 higher education, top 5 in K-12 education, and we wanted to make sure everybody lived in a safe community. We cut taxes and fees. We made the place to where everybody wanted to move to Florida. We changed the Constitution, so it made it almost impossible to raise taxes. How many people have moved to Florida? A few, right? Now think about it. There's a reason that people are moving from New York. When I was governor, we became the 3rd biggest state we passed New York. And guess what? AOC's mom moved to Florida. Where's President Trump? He's in Florida. Why? Florida values freedom. We fight against anti-Semitic BDS policies, and Randy Fine's here, and he's been a leader. I just ran a banner over New York City beaches, and it said, "Hate socialism, us too, move to Florida." Now, some people say, aren't you worried you're going to get all those socialists? No, they stay. So that's why we've added way more Republicans, because we're the free state of Florida. Now, let me just close. Now, let's just slow down and think about this. Great nations don't automatically last forever. Every day, people around the world are desperately trying to get into our great country. We are the greatest nation in the world. We cannot be torn up from within, and that is why we all need to continue to support our great President, Donald Trump, and bust our butts to make sure we win every state and every local election, and that's how you win national elections. So I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be here, and let me just finish with one thing I just want to say. I want to be clear about something. If you want to be anti-Semitic, there's already one political party that features that. Our side cannot tolerate anti-Semitism. We cannot and we will not put up with that in our Republican Party. All of us must stand together and condemn anti-Semitism and hatred wherever we see it. So I'm grateful for everybody here that's busting their butt to get Republicans elected. I'm very appreciative of what you're doing to help Israel and fight anti-Semitism. If there's anything I can do to be supportive, give me a call. Have a great night. Bye-bye.